You're a technologist. You love what you do. You value a workplace that celebrates diversity. You're looking to join a company that speaks up for inclusion, serves their communities, and drives meaningful social impact. And one that is also a cutting-edge innovator in the technology space. And you can't imagine finding all of this at one company. But you can. Welcome to Tech at RBC, a place where diversity and inclusion is more than just a value. It's who we are. Working for Tech at RBC means being embraced for who you are and the expertise you bring. We provide career-accelerating opportunities for women in tech, including access to programs, events, and resources. We value the imaginative ideas, skills, and global perspectives that Canadian newcomers bring to the table. We also offer support programs and workshops to further enable our newcomers. To make sure our leaders represent the diverse communities we serve, we work to move underrepresented BIPOC talent into senior management and executive roles. Fit right into the future of tech at RBC, where if something doesn't exist, we're already working on it.
Queerness is about being amazing.
Queerness is living the life that you want to live.
Queer is overcoming struggle and shining. Brilliance. Queer is brilliance.
C'est un mot qui est assez large pour être inclusif et assez spécifique pour qu'on sache de quoi on parle.
Queer is such a powerful word, I feel. It's something that I was super afraid of when I was younger.
Queer, c'est plus qu'une communauté, c'est plus qu'une identité, c'est une façon d'accepter l'autre, c'est le partage de l'amour.
C'est des gens qui décident de s'associer à des valeurs de titre diversité et inclusion.
Being queer has a political aspect where you need to push for space for yourself. You need to push for your rights.
It's a label that we can adopt as a community that is all inclusive and that really encompasses everybody that is different outside the box, that feels different, that acts different, that loves different.
I like being with other people that is, maybe like myself, but also different. And that's cool. It's okay.
Queerness for me means just being who you are. It's really just about expressing yourself in your true identity, just being yourself.
Queer is one of the really important identities that I have for myself.
When you're queer and you're your true self, you are amazing. And that's what queerness means to me, being yourself.
Still love that video. Bonjour à tous. Happy spring. We made it through another winter and really excited for today. Bienvenue QTs à notre 4e édition du Salon d'emploi carrière. Welcome QTs to our 4th edition of Qareers Virtual Fair. QueerTech souhaite commencer par reconnaître les peuples autochtones des terres sur lesquelles nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui. Bien que nous réunissons sur une plateforme virtuelle, j'aimerais prendre un moment pour reconnaître l'importance de la terre que nous appelons chacun notre chez-soi. Nous le faisons pour réaffirmer notre engagement et notre responsabilité dans l'amélioration des relations entre les nations et dans l'amélioration de notre propre compréhension des peuples autochtones locaux et de leur culture. D'un océan à l'autre, nous reconnaissons les territoires ancestraux et non cédés de toutes les Inuits, Métis et membres des Premières Nations qui font de cette nation leur terre. Je viens aujourd'hui de Tiohtià:ke ou de Montréal et je reconnais que je me trouve sur des terres autochtones non cédées. La nation Kanien'kehá:ka est reconnue comme la gardienne de ses terres et de ses eaux. Je vous invite à vous joindre à moi pour un moment de réflexion afin de reconnaître les préjudices et les erreurs du passé et de réfléchir à la manière dont nous pouvons, chacun à notre façon, d'aller de l'avant dans un esprit de réconciliation et de collaboration. QueerTech would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people that call this nation home. I come to you today from Tiohtià:ke or Montreal, and I acknowledge that I'm located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodian of the lands and waters. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Cet événement ne serait pas possible sans le soutien de RBC qui présente pour la 3e fois QVF. QueerTech et RBC croient que la diversité est plus qu'une valeur, c'est une force. Nous sommes fiers des progrès que nous avons réalisés ensemble au cours des 3 dernières années et nous sommes très motivés par ce qui reste à venir. Je tiens aussi à remercier BDC en tant que partenaire niveau fierté de QVF cette année, ainsi que tous nos commanditaires et membres corporatifs. This event would not be possible without the support of our presenting partner for QVF 2023, RBC. QueerTech and RBC believe that diversity is more than just a value, it's our strength. We're proud of the progress we've made together over the last 3 years, and we are very motivated about what's still to come. I want to also thank BDC as a Pride level partner for QVF this year, and also thank you to all of our sponsor and corporate members for joining us this year. Je suis très heureux d'annoncer d'ailleurs 2 grandes réalisations que mon équipe et que notre organisation a achevé cette année. Nous avons lancé QT Access, c'est notre premier programme de 9 semaines pour aider notre communauté à accéder au secteur technologie. 30 participants queer et trans reçoivent un énorme soutien de notre équipe et de nos membres pour renforcer leur confiance et leurs compétences. Really excited to announce and make few announcements this morning, and really 2 great milestones that my team and our organization have achieved so far. We have launched QT Access. It is a 9-week program to help our community access tech. We have 30 queer and trans participants that are receiving tremendous support from our team and mentors to build their confidence and skills. La deuxième réalisation est le lancement d'une communauté numérique QueerTech pour créer un espace sécuritaire et inclusif pour notre communauté afin de se connecter, de collaborer et d'apprendre. D'ailleurs, nos objectifs de cette plateforme, c'est de favoriser un sentiment d'appartenance pour permettre à notre communauté de s'épanouir dans l'industrie technologie. On veut essayer de collaborer plus et de bâtir des réseaux professionnels pour accéder à des opportunités et faire progresser votre carrière. Aussi, vous fournir un accès à des ressources de l'éducation et des opportunités de mentorat pour vous aider à réussir dans votre carrière et dans le lancement de vos startups. The second milestone is really big for our organization. We are launching our QueerTech digital community that's going to be coming up in April. We're doing a soft launch, and then May will be a full launch for the platform. And the goal is really creating a safe and inclusive space for our community to connect, collaborate, and learn. We're really looking to foster a sense of community and belonging, and so to empower our community to thrive in the tech industry. We're looking to build more collaboration and build professional network to access opportunities, and so you can advance your career, and also provide access to resources, education, mentorship opportunities, and so to help you succeed in your career and also launching tech businesses. Pour ceux qui ont suivi notre QT Connect Café pendant la pandémie qu'on a fait les 2 dernières années ou les 3 dernières années, nous continuerons à produire du contenu pour vous. Mais cette fois, on va changer un peu le format pour que ce soit un balado. La première saison de notre QT Podcast, comme on l'appelle, est une série d'entretiens avec des professionnels et des entrepreneurs de LGBTQ+, dans le secteur de technologie. Nous avons créé ce balado pour influencer un changement de culture positive et en créant une plateforme pour partager les expériences, les réalisations et les défis rencontrés par les membres de notre communauté. So for those who've been with us for the last few years, you've seen that and you've been following us. We've been doing QT Connect Cafe over the pandemic until recently, and we will continue producing content for you, but we want to change things up. So we're going to be doing a podcast. The QT podcast is a series of interviews with inspiring 2S LGBTQ plus professionals and entrepreneurs in the tech ecosystem. So we're creating this podcast to influence positive and cultural change by creating a platform for sharing experience, achievement, and challenges faced by our community. Thank you. So, cette année, notre thème est renforcer la résilience professionnelle des personnes queer et trans. Et nous pensons que le développement de la résilience et l'adaptabilité à la communauté, de notre communauté est clé dans le succès, surtout dans ces temps qui sont très incertains. So our theme this year is building queer and trans career resilience, and we believe that building community resilience and adaptability is key to our success, especially during these uncertain times. Cette année, on a un peu changé les choses. Aujourd'hui, le premier jour, vous serez consacré aux professionnels ayant plus de 3 ans d'expérience, tandis que le deuxième jour, demain, s'adressera à ceux qui commencent leur carrière ou qui transitionnent vers l'industrie technologique. As you've seen, probably we've changed things up a little bit this year for this event. So day one today, we will be focusing on professionals with 3 years of experience. And tomorrow, day 2, will be focused on those who are just starting their career or transitioning into tech. It doesn't mean that you can't attend both days. You're all welcome to join us. Et nous sommes ravis d'introduire aussi des groupes de discussion aujourd'hui, comme vous allez le voir, où des professionnels queer occupent des fonctions similaires, pourront partager leur expérience et leurs connaissances dans un espace safe et un espace de soutien. Le deuxième jour, demain encore, nous organisons des ateliers dirigés par des experts et axés sur les opportunités à saisir pour les professionnels queer en début de carrière et en transition de carrière. So as you've seen, we've also excited really to launch today peer groups on day one. So this is for professionals who are in similar roles, so either aspiring a professional in product management, data science, and others, and looking to share their experience and knowledge in a supportive and safe space. In day 2, we will have an expert-led workshop and workshops focused on unlocking opportunities for early careers or career transition in QTs. So, que vous soyez en début de carrière ou un professionnel expérimenté, nous vous invitons à partager votre queer power avec nous. Nous nous remercions de vous joindre à nous et nous espérons que vous vivez une expérience fantastique QVF. So whether you're just starting your career or you're experienced professionals, we invite you to come as you are and share your queer power with us. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a fantastic QVF experience. And I'm going to kick it to invite our first speaker, but before we go, I want to tell you a little bit about our first speaker, Ryan Auld. He's the Director for Reconciliation Services at RBC Capital Market. Ryan is a friendly Maritimer. We love Maritimers, and he works at RBC Capital Market since 2011. He began his career in Toronto and relocated back to the Maritimes in 2021 to help set up capital market business and client services footprint in Bedford, Nova Scotia. While contributing to the growth in the region, Ryan oversees a team of 40 employees in Nova Scotia and 20 in Toronto who work on reconciling the data for capital market business line. As a gay dyslexic, navigating issues around otherness and community has helped him build his culture and authenticity and acceptance in the business world. Welcome, Ryan, to the stage.
Bonjour. Hi.
Bonjour, Ryan. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And really excited to hear your keynote, and we'll connect after that to chat a little bit.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, et les autres qui sont ni l'un ni nous. Je vous remercie d'avoir été ici avec nous aujourd'hui. C'est tellement une place fière pour moi de savoir que quelque chose comme ceci arrive. Quand j'ai pensé à ce que je peux dire aujourd'hui, ça va être pour la plupart en anglais, mais je voulais faire une petite blague où je fais des signes comme ci, comme ça, pour dire que vous avez reçu des instructions sur les sorties de secours juste au cas où, avant que je traduise en anglais. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and our non-binary and transgendered friends. I am very pleased to be here with you today. My speech will be in English, although the French people just received directions on how to exit the plane if need be. My French is pretty terrible, but I think we always need to make the effort to recognize the other as best we can. Speaking of recognizing the other, I hope that we are all conscious today of what is happening in the world around our transgendered brothers, sisters, and others, and that we can continue to support them and let them know how loved they are and how we will continue to fight with them and for them. You know, those are themes inside our community that are just so important. We can't talk about resilience without looking at what we as a community has gone through, what each of us have gone through on a personal journey. And yeah, it's unique to each and every one of us, but I do feel that by sharing those stories together, we come together in the power of the other, and that our strength supports each other to lift ourselves up. The introduction kind of said it already, but my name is Ryan Auld. I'm the Director of Reconciliation Services with Capital Markets at RBC. RBC has not only been my employer, but it has become a home for me. It is the place where I felt comfortable coming out, and that coming out is what helped me to really be building my career. It probably sounds very cliche to say that, but you know, I was experiencing some sentiment of otherness when I started my career in Toronto. I really thought that, you know, you had to be a certain type of person. You had to, you know, I was in my 30s and people were settling down around me, or they were going to the select nightclubs, and neither of those did I feel like I fit into. In fact, I didn't even feel welcomed in the community when I first started with the company, because I wasn't what I was seeing around me. So like many people, I thought, oh, I can just conform. I will become what I see, right? I see other people succeeding, let me become that. So I was living as a out male at the time, and I closed myself off. I would not let people know what my lifestyle was like at home, or if I had roommates or anything like that. I would just start avoiding all of the questions that would come down. Oh, what are you doing tonight? Oh, well, you know, I've got my things on the go. But as I did that, as I kind of hid from those questions, I became better at concealing myself. But that still wasn't getting me anywhere in my career. It's kind of sad to look back at it and say, I put that much work into trying to be somebody else to not even make it there. But eventually I gave up. I was like, this doesn't work. It's not making me happy. This isn't who I want to be. And when I did come out at work, you know, it was, again, it felt like such a stupid moment, because here I had been out for 15 years with all of my friends and everything else. And it felt dumb to kind of come out again. But once I started coming out, it gave me a lot of confidence that I was going to accept myself, whether they wanted me there or not, whether they would accept me, right? Like this theme of resilience, right? It's right there in what our community comes to all the time. We are not going to let somebody else dictate to us. We're going to step up, and we're going to be, and we are going to face rejection after rejection, even if we have to. It doesn't matter. We're stronger than that. We can do more than that. And it's all keyed to that internal self. So as part of my coming out journey, I also found that I wasn't enjoying the culture around me. I actually found the Toronto culture to be a bit jarring for who I was. Everyone was sticking to themselves, and, you know, just this is work. But as a friendly Maritimer, I wanted to know everything about everybody. I was so excited to meet new people, get names, and then I wanted people to be meeting each other because I thought all of these people were really, really great. And I started organizing events, right? And trying to find ways to create mixers on the floor or even after work, whatever it took. I wasn't going to accept the culture that was handed to me. I wanted to bring my own culture there. And those are the building blocks that really started my career development, was knowing authentically who I was, accepting myself, and then finding ways to express that. Some of the things that you'll probably be talking about this week are networking. You're going to talk about, you know, you're learning how to manage stress, stay adaptable. Like through all that, I hope you will be looking at you, right? And finding out those things that will just ring with authenticity. If I can share one with you, I really think it's great for professionals to be building what they would call a brand statement. So a brand statement is finding a way to create this authentic self-statement. So mine is, I'm a friendly Maritimer who brings value add by bringing people together, right? It's authentic to who I am, so I never have to worry about that or where it's going to go or be inauthentic. And when you think about those inauthentic things, I mean, we've got a lot of examples in the world these days. You know, I don't want to disname any company in particular, but you know, there's some soda pop companies, let's say, and for 50 years, it's always been, you know, a black cola. And then suddenly they come out with a clear version of it. It creates this bit of brand dissonance where it hits you and it just doesn't sit quite right because it's not what you expected and it's not as honest as you thought they were being. And in the same way, professionally, we want to be presenting that, right? We want to be creating this image that not only is out there, but that is us, so that at no point there is an incorrect reflection of who we are. We don't have to stand on guard and try and protect some kind of secret. It's just to be on that authentic route. And if you can find that way to be authentic, you are going to you are going to succeed and exceed in those skills. You know, it's interesting being a queer in a tech space, but I'm also a bit neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic. So had I been born 20 years earlier, there'd probably be no autocorrects and I would never stand a chance at a professional job. Technology has given me the ability that I don't have to worry about those things. I misspell things all the time. Autocorrect takes care of it. It's a lovely thing. Don't ask me to spell things on a whiteboard or else I'll do all capitals because it's my only trick to actually keep my letters the same spacing. But what I've learned from that is other skills, right? Other adaptabilities. And so rather than trying to present in a way that is strong, collected, I will just lay out all my cards on the table and be like, I can do this, I can do this, I need technology for this, but what I'm really good at is X, Y, and Z. And I know from having that awareness, right? Like that authentic self, knowing what is me rather than the image that somebody else might have of me, those are the things that I bring to the table. Any job that I go for, whether it's, vertical, horizontal, whatever you like, I know what I can bring to the table. And I bring those things to every single project. Most people, when you get hired for a job, you're not going to know the job to begin with, right? Somebody's going to have to train you. Somebody's going to have to show you the new system or how things work. So think about that authentic self. When you take your authentic self into these things, what are you going to be bringing to the job? How will you be improving or enhancing that? And let that be part of your journey. Yeah, it's been amazing kind of owning that authentic self, not only for like personal, oh my goodness, I don't have to fake out and be somebody else I don't want to be at work. But it's really nice to see when it starts paying off in your career, right? So bringing people together was kind of like the base structure that I went into. And I was like, well, this is what I like. This is what I'm familiar with. I like to know people. I like to see things and make all of those connections. That actually led me out of some like analytical work and into a people manager field. Now I'm overseeing a group, I think it was mentioned before, I've overseen a group of 40 out here in Nova Scotia, and then another 20 in Toronto. And it's fascinating to me, right? Because it just clicks. Like that is what I am passionate about. Every single day, I love people. I love connecting with them. I love seeing them grow. I love seeing them challenge. I would not do well in a job where I didn't have that. I'd like to think that, everybody can do everything, but if you're not happy doing everything, then don't try and shoot for that. Don't try and shoot for somebody else's happiness, because I just don't think it's maintainable. Be resilient, be who you are, be authentically who you are. You might get rejected a lot for it, but you have strengths and talents in that. You as an individual, right? You are the best you out there. Nobody else can be you, just you. And so don't try to be somebody else. They're already busy doing that. Bring yourself in and let yourself be that. And I've got to say, like, I'm very, very grateful that I was able to have that at RBC, because I didn't think I did, right? And I thought things were very, very different. But once I opened up, I found that energy kind of came back, and it built trust, right? Once I started sharing my story and saying, yeah, this is who I am. I actually, am really interested in this guy. And actually, this is the guy who I'm going to marry this summer. Thank you. Yeah, I started talking about my partner and how excited I was, because I wanted to be sharing that with the people around me. And what that did was that actually unlocked a huge business factor for me. It unlocked trust. So whereas before I wasn't trusting other people with who I was, they could sense that. There wasn't that trust back. And once that trust came into play, it starts moving things around, right? People can trust you. People can come to you. You can be involved in more projects, activities, oversight, right? Like you can run with things if you've got trust. I work particularly in capital markets. So capital markets is kind of the, stock market, Wall Street, Bay Street kind of stuff. and trust is just such a big thing there. You know, you don't have to know everything, but can somebody trust you to take care of something, to execute on something? We work with, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars day in, day out. It's kind of amazing. So to have that capacity of trust, like, that's business gold. And I think all of you can also have that trust available to you. It's just be ready to share, know who you want to share with, know what you want to share with them. You don't have to share everything. There's people who definitely overshare. But yeah, just be comfortable with that and rest secure that you are meaningful in your uniqueness. And that's a beautiful thing. I think we're just about time. Sorry. Oh, just one moment. Technical difficulties.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Hey.
Hey, Ryan. Thank you.
Hey. Nice to see you.
Ryan, congratulations on your wedding. Really exciting.
Thank you. We're all very privileged to have this right.
Absolutely.
It's not something that I actually ever thought I would really want. But we're going to have a nice celebration of love. And I think celebrating love in a queer space right now is super important to do.
Absolutely. You know, I have a lot of questions, and I'll try and stick to our time. But you know, you've touched base on many topics that are part of our theme today, and you know, the first one I want to talk about a little bit is that coming out, right? Because you know, as a community, whatever the progress we've reached in Canada, and we are at the forefront of human rights, LGBTQ rights. Coming out is still part of our story, and we still have to do it because we live in this heteronormative society that assume everyone is heterosexual. And so for me, it's like coming out is not just about telling your employer or your colleagues about you and who you are, but it's a way for you to liberate yourself and how do you feel when you come to work? You know, how do you start carrying yourself and becoming authentic to yourself? And it's part of also being ready for leadership, right? I think we've seen it. Leaders who are more vulnerable and authentic tend to succeed more. So I'm curious a little bit to hear from your story. You know, you've talked a little about you were not out and you made that decision to come out.
Yeah.
How did your mindset change, or what changed between when you are not out and you come out in continuing in that leadership journey?
I'll say I had a lot more energy after coming out. I mean, the amount of energy that we spend trying to hide something.
Yep.
Right? Like it was ridiculous. Like I can't look at that person because I don't want somebody to be thinking that I'm checking that person out. I shouldn't talk to that person over there because somebody might think that maybe there's a thing going on. It's exhausting.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something we talk a lot about it with a lot of people from the community when we talk about coming out. It's really important because I know a lot of people think about, we want to separate between our personal life and professional, but really, if you're looking at advancing your career, removing that burden, right? And to liberate you and to kind of allow you to focus on working to move in the leadership ladder is very important.
Well, I also think it's about creating space for other people, right? Like I've got a favorite quote that's, when you let your light shine, you give the right to others to illuminate.
Absolutely.
Right? And like, I'm sorry, I'm a white male. I am very privileged, right? So when I go into a room, I inherently have a choice of, oh my gosh, I can just participate in this beautiful privilege, or I can try to use my privilege to benefit others and level set things by saying, no, this is just appearance. Let's acknowledge that there are things beyond that. And, I think you asked about coming out in terms of being a leader, right? That's important. That's important that I show to my people that they all matter.
Yeah, visibility matter. And you touched something, I want to talk a little bit about privilege and the role it plays and how do we navigate, the system and, advancing a career, our careers, your career, or anyone who's watching us today is pretty hard, right? In general, right? The pyramid gets narrow and narrow as you go up. And so, or as you get to the top of that corporate ladder, and the system is built, against many underrepresented groups. And while our privilege sometimes can pull us up, it can also, the unprivileged side can also pulls us down. And everyone has all these identity facets that we deal with at the workplace, right? And so for you, you mentioned earlier, you're like in privilege, but also you're queer and you come out. And so how did you navigate the system to get to the leadership role that you occupy today?
I mean, the leadership was just about the people, right? And setting the tone and kind of being present and standing up for things, starting with myself, right? Once I stood up for myself and I said, this is who I am, I don't care what you think, right? And guys, most of that was in my head. People at the office were like, meh, whatever, Ryan, you be you, which wasted energy. But like, once you can start seeing behind those facades, right? And seeing that this is how I see myself versus this is how I think other people are seeing me, and start narrowing that down, it gives you a real strength to then start helping for other people to be seen, right? And a good leader isn't like the person who charges ahead. It's the person who takes everybody around them and lifts everybody up together.
Absolutely. So we have questions that's coming up from our participants. And the question is like, am I the only one who is worried about selecting a strategic moment at which to come out? Do you have any experience with it?
I mean, haven't we all kind of gone through that in our personal life, right? I mean, when I came out to my mom, we were in a fight and she was like, you can't drop out of university. And we were just fighting. And then all of a sudden I was just like, well, I'm not going to drop out of university, but I've got a boyfriend. And she's like, I don't care that you've got a boyfriend. You stay in university. Like those moments, as much as we might want to strategize and think about them, the universe is going to bring it to you. It's going to find the moment where that will come together. And be brave, be resilient. Like, you don't need for it to be perfect. You just need to move forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious also, when what are some of the, let's say, most unexpected challenges you faced in your career as you were going up the ladder? Curious to hear a little bit, just like, what are some of the challenges you faced, and how did you build that resilience to overcome them? And probably there is a very long list, but what are some of the
I mean, that's a big question. Oh my gosh, you guys are going to get all my secrets, right? Yeah, I mean, I still struggle with my career and my day-to-day because I feel like every day we're asked again to do more, to be better, to have different standards. And I often forget for myself that each day I am a different me, and what my best looks like that day is going to differ. For my personal career path, I don't know. I think I might be bad at interviewing, but like I've never really gotten a job through an interview. What's kind of worked for me, and what I really enjoy about where I work in capital markets, is it's a place that recognizes the hard work that people do. And so, you know, you'll kind of be given like a sandbox and be like, yeah, go in the sandbox. Nobody tells you to build a castle, but if you start building a castle, people will recognize that and see the skill and see the talent and find things for you and make opportunities. And that might be, you know, a very unique personal situation that not a lot of people have had. But that's kind of how I've grown my career each time. Is I'm in a position, I try to add more to what I'm doing, say, give different perspective, bring in a different value add, change the space, and just try to keep on building it up.
Absolutely. So we have about 3 minutes, and so my last kind of questions here. You know, when you lose, you know, in times like these, and people lose their jobs and struggle through new jobs, it's very hard to be motivated, to find motivation and the energy to push through and interview a job. So, you know, in my case, sometimes I tend to look for inspiration around me to get that energy to move forward. So what inspires you, or where do you find inspiration?
Well, I find my strength in the Golden Girls. They keep me pretty sane. I will watch that over and over again because, like, pandemic, I can't take more anxiety or not knowing. So I turn on something that I've seen 1,000 times and I watch it, and it gives me comfort. So make sure you know what your comfort thing is. You know, losing a role, I was for a while really jobless, and it was over the course of several months, and that had never happened to me before. It was right before I started working at RBC. I took it hard. I took it hard, and I was trying to find, most of my life had been about who I was in terms of a career. Like, I was washing the bathroom floor to ceiling every single week just for some kind of validation, for somebody to say, you did a good job. I mean, terrible, right? But I mean, clean bathroom was good. You know, some people might need to hear this, right? Yeah, you are not your job. You are not. You are a unique, amazing individual, and that individuality, that, like, who you are is worth something. So never forget that.
Absolutely. Being laid off doesn't reflect on your ability or your experience or your knowledge. It's how the economy works, and it sucks. But it's very important to remind people that they're not divided by their jobs. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you, guys.
Sharing your experience and sharing yourselves with us. We really appreciate it. These stories are important for our community, and it's important to hear them. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for letting RBC be part of this. We really appreciate that you guys thought about us. And, you know, to everybody out there, it is a tough journey right now, but this is an amazing community to be a part of. And there's always hope out there. It gets better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Awesome. So thank you again, Ryan, and really excited. We're going to dive into our next panel on navigating career challenges with resilience, and it's going to be with Nisa and René. And so really excited to kind of dive into the conversation. So let's bring them on. Welcome. Good afternoon, and welcome, René and Nisa. Thank you for joining me and joining us today.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Before we kind of dive into our conversation today, why don't we start by getting, quick introduction and share a little bit about yourself and your journey. Nisa, why don't you get started?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you, yeah.
Wonderful. So I'm the manager of delivery policy for the Canadian Digital Service. CDS is the central digital service agency housed inside the federal government. So we build open source products, applications, and components that are usable by any department or agency in Canada, with all of our open source code available to be forked and adapted. And usually for both government and the private sector, we've embedded our compliance experts on product teams. So my team helps ensure that the products integrate the legislative, regulatory, and policy requirements necessary for adoption and scaling. So things like privacy of personal information, accessibility, official languages compliance. So my job's to talk policy to technical teams, technical features to policy compliance teams, and digital access, security, and privacy to everyone. And I have a particular fondness for hearing about and studying nonlinear career journeys. I have a bachelor's of fine arts in creative writing and film studies, which is always a surprise, no matter what field I'm giving a career talk to. I've worked almost my entire career in the public sector, in nonprofits, universities, and at multiple levels of government. And I came to tech very sideways. So starting with staffing the IT help desk at a library, I ran digital literacy programming for seniors and newcomers. I've worked on research and policy on the tech sector and tech workers and emerging technology. I'm a shoddy coder, unless it's R and we're working with data, a decent content and service designer, and I'm increasingly interested in organizational design.
Fantastic. Thank you. I have a lot of questions for you coming up in a bit. René, why don't you take it and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is René. I work for Accenture. I am with the Strategy and Consulting Division, the Healthcare and Public Services practice. And I'm also the recruiting lead for our Pride Employee Resource Group for the Montreal chapter. And as for my background, it's biomedical engineering with an MBA. And I've done a bunch of different things, but the main things, I started my career working for a hospital within the biomedical engineering department. And then I worked for Abbott Labs for many years. So one of the big pharmaceutical and medical device companies. And I've been doing consulting. So I came to Accenture through successive acquisitions, which is the case for many consultants. And I've mostly worked on large scale implementations all over Canada. And when I say all over Canada, it's from Victoria to St. John's and all the way to Iqaluit in Nunavut. And I've done the occasional projects internationally, so United States, France, Germany, and Fiji. As far as on the personal side, I am married to a man, and we recently adopted the most adorable little girl. We have been fostering her from birth, so we really had her from the very beginning. Now she's 2.5. And we have 2 dogs as well that sometimes I think run the house, but that's a topic. So talking about like nonlinear career, it's funny when you said that, Nisa, the first thing that popped to my mind was like, isn't that like a queer specialty? Because really, growing up queer, like few people are lucky enough to know the moment they're born that they're queer, right? It's something you discover about yourself. And usually you look back and you're like, oh yeah, you know what? That was always like this. But it's a process. And by the time you discover, you're already like on your path or on a destination to be someone you're not. And then you have to unlearn that and decide, okay, no, that doesn't work with who I am now. And then you're looking for yourself. And that's not just your orientation or your identity. It affects every aspect of your life. So career-wise, so I feel that we tend to kind of like shop around for who am I, right? So I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. I'm going to be, I don't know, on Broadway.
And René, you touched something that actually I want to ask both of you. How has your identity and background shaped your career journey? And let's keep answers to like a couple of minutes so I can ask. There's a lot of questions I have for
Yeah.
you today. So, like in kind of a couple of minutes, like how is your identity and background shaped your career journey? Nisa, why don't you take it away?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I have worked in fields where it was impossible to come out, where it would have been career ending. I have also worked in fields and in organizations where we weren't the majority, but we were certainly a strong contingent, and it was never an issue. And I think it is a privilege to be able to choose a career path where that is possible, where you have the opportunity to make career decisions that aren't just about your income and your title and where you live, but also organizations that have strong DEI policies where identity, whether that's queer identity or others, is not just like included, but celebrated and comes with all of the supportive policies that you would need around that. So it is, I am lucky enough at this stage in my career to be able to make decisions about where I want to work based on culture and on access to health insurance for my spouse and for all of the things that come into play. And I recognize that is very much not everybody's experience, and particularly when you are starting out in a career, either transitioning into a new field or earlier in your life, that is not always the first thing that people can make a decision around.
Absolutely. René, for you, how has your identity and background shaped your career? I'm curious also to kind of hear your strategy that you used in navigating these challenges or setback as a result.
So for me, it has literally shaped everything, but very accidentally. So when I started, and that's before I went into biomedical engineering, right? So it's my I did mechanical engineering first, and I worked for about a year in that field. And I felt like I had a good relationship with my boss, and he knew I was gay, and it felt, but then I started being really, really, really sick, and doctors didn't know what I had. But I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time, if you had all the signs of an aggressive viral infection and you happened to be gay, it did not matter that the test was, they were like, oh, you've got AIDS, right? So and I was in a panic. In my mind, it's like, okay, I'm going to die. And I was in such a vulnerable state. And then they told me, you know what, as soon as we have a cancellation at the Clinic of Immunology, like you have to go and we can call you and it's going to be like same day. Like you have, so what I did is I told my boss, I said, look, this is happening. I'm waiting for this call. So they can call me anytime and I'll just have to drop everything and go. He's like, oh, sure. But he said, if you could give me advance notice though, I would appreciate it. So I'm like, sure, no big deal. And then that following weekend, I was leaving on the Friday. I wasn't working on the Friday. Mm-hmm. So on the Thursday, I got the call and they said, okay, you have an appointment, there's a consultation on next Tuesday. So I called my boss, got the voicemail, left a message. So, okay, it's going to be the Tuesday morning. Mm-hmm. When I walked into work the Monday morning, I go to my desk and then I get a call and it was the director of HR. I said, could you come to the office? Sure. I come to the office and my boss was sitting there, not looking at me, looking at the table. He read me a letter that it was literally 1.5 lines, just said that I was basically laid off. So I was fired without cause because I was not yet experienced enough where they needed cause. No explanation, nothing, just saying that I was let go. And he looked at the director of HR and he said, okay, I'll let you handle the rest. He got up and he left the room without even looking at me. And at the time, I wasn't not out to everything. I was in a state where I was young. I was starting my career. And the director of HR looks at me, she's like, what happened? Like I just had a stellar performance review. So she was like, what happened? Yeah. And I didn't know. She gave me a letter to sign where they were giving me 2 weeks minus any days of vacation I might have taken during that year. And I felt at that point, I just was not comfortable opening up to that person. Yeah. And I signed the letter. Mm-hmm. And after that, it was extremely hard. I was completely unable to go and apply for a job. like you feel so vulnerable and so ashamed at the same time. You're like, who am I going to talk? Because it's like, am I really going to go do an interview? They're asking what happened, and what, I don't want to tell them about that.
Yeah.
And at the time I thought I was dying anyway, so I'm like, sure, whatever. Turned out it wasn't AIDS. They never found what it was, but 2 months later I started recovering, and then it completely went away. So I'll never know what it was, but it was something else. But the impact, so it took a long time. I literally went and found a job at a call center, doing customer service at a call center, because I needed something where I wouldn't have to think. I would just go and do my job. And then it forced me to think, and I decided, you know what? I want to go into a field where people are not an obstacle that we have to work around, but they're actually the focus. So that's why I decided, okay, it's not going to be mechanical engineering. So I went to do grad studies in biomedical engineering, and I switched to healthcare, and I've never looked back.
That's interesting story. And you touched on something that I want to ask both of you on, which is, a lot of people, you stay at a job because sometimes job security is very important. We're not all privileged to just quit the same day and leave, right? People have responsibilities, maybe have challenges to do that. But sometimes you're not appreciated and you really want to leave the job, but you're also scared of taking risk to pursue a new opportunity, because sometimes you're like, is it going to be worse or is it going to be better, right? And so how, talking from this job and the career opportunities that you had, how did you balance taking the risk from pursuing an opportunity with the potential for failure or rejection? Nisa, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So, and you've touched on this exactly. As an individual, your capacity to absorb risk and to stay resilient in the face of career setbacks or sudden shakeups is entirely due to the privilege of your circumstances. So your savings and house situation, whether you're partnered, if they have secure employment, whether you're supporting extended family, how imperative health insurance is. At many points in my career, those circumstances were scary and loud, and they drowned out any internal feelings of resilience or accurate assessments of my own capability and ability to absorb risk. And that's not a personal failing. If that's where you're at, it's because the risk for you of job loss or not getting an opportunity might be higher than your peers or higher than it was for your parents and mentors. And there's just more noise around you. So those obstacles and that risk calculus, it's not abstract. It can't be measured without taking into consideration the real world inequities that unfairly put different kinds of obstacles or different precarity in front of different people. So my like personal assessment and strategies is probably not going to be helpful for this audience because they're specific to me. But my advice is to do whatever you can to ground yourself in the reality of the situation. So both the assessment of the risk for you and your own strengths and resiliencies. So whether that's a therapist or mentor or friends, to just like deeply know what your bottom line is and how much risk you can absorb, like practically and emotionally, and make a clear-eyed assessment of what you can actually absorb and what your options are for next steps. And that's something that's very hard to do alone and in isolation, especially when the factors are conflicting or where the situation you're in is destabilizing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to come back to the mentorship because that's part of kind of like I have some questions around that. But René, I'm going to come back to you because you mentioned something, you left that job, you did the call center, and then you went to healthcare. And sometimes when we are trying to figure out our career, and you get laid off, sometimes people they want to find another opportunity right away. Sometimes it is good to take a moment, regroup, and figure out also what is it you want. It's an opportunity that can open new paths for your career and your opportunities. For you, talk to us a little bit about that transition that you made. Did you you talked about you took some time, you were thinking about it. So walk us through that process and how did you end up in the healthcare?
for me, at first, I needed a way to overcome this, I guess, this shame I had, like where I just could not imagine myself in an interview having to explain what happened. And I thought, how am I going to get past that? So I don't think at the time I had like an actual strategy. I think I was maybe too young and experienced for that. But I think at a subconscious level, it's a mourning process. I think that when you have setbacks in your career, when you're facing obstacles and it's just not happening, right? For example, you keep getting passed in favor of like more junior colleagues who are getting promoted, and you're like, what do they have that I don't have? And you don't see it, but it keeps happening over and over. And you're like, and I think at some point you have to stop trying to understand, because maybe no one's going to tell you the truth. That's just the reality, right? They're going to give you the Kool-Aid, and no, you just have to accept that this door isn't opening for you. This person you thought you would be, that this role you thought you would have, it's not panning out. And we all hear like, oh, never give up on your dream. Well, that's very easy to see if you're Pink or you're Mark Zuckerberg, but for the vast majority of us, there are doors that will not open. And when that happens, I think you have to stop and say, okay, or in my case at the time, a door that I was incapable of opening. I couldn't even knock. It's like this door was too terrifying. I couldn't go there. And then when you're like, okay, this will not be my path. So you're like, this door won't open. And I think you need to mourn that. You need to mourn who you wanted to be and who you'll never be. And once you've made peace with that, you can look around and say, okay, what doors are open to me? And then you look at those and you pick, okay, how can I redefine what success will look like in my career based on what's available now? Not based on what I wanted, not based on that path, because this door is just there and standing in my way. So, okay, I'll redefine success in a new direction based on opportunities that are achievable and realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think that's a really great way to look at it, because sometimes we leave, or we get laid off, especially, right? We're talking about, because a lot of people now are facing that. And so you need to go through that mourning process, and it's important to take that moment for yourself to just kind of process it, right? And then start exploring what path to take, and use, we do a lot of support for a lot of different community members and connection with partners and stuff, but it's really important to take that time. I want to kind of move into a point. Nisa, you talked about you had a non-linear or non-traditional path, and this is something we talk a lot about, because in the past you used to like study mechanical engineering, stay in mechanical engineering, or study, right? People would study something and stay in that field, and you've moved around. So I want to talk a little bit, because there is a lot of people who are trying to get into tech and come from different industries and trying to figure out, is this the right move for me, and how do I do, how would my career looks like if someone look at my resume. So talk to us a little bit just about how did you navigate employers' conversations when people look at your resume and they're like, well, you studied this and you did this, but you did the other thing. And so talk to us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. So most people's career trajectories are not linear. Most people don't have the privilege of planning out and executing an ideal one. Jobs that exist today just simply did not exist when any of us were in school. Recessions and layoffs happen, illness happens. And most people are smoothing out the story that they tell about their career. So they're telling this like big picture arc that in reality was a series of small steps and missteps that probably seemed reasonable at the time, whether for career reasons or life reasons, or were just the only option, and that could have gone in many different directions. And so it's, for myself, I can look back and I can tell a really clear, neat story, or a series of stories about how I got here that is really sellable in a job interview or on career talks. But in practicality, it was a series of like fits and starts and explorations. And I had no idea at 20, when I was helping senior citizens understand how Microsoft Word works, that I would even remotely end up in the tech field. And the organizations that I've worked for like certainly didn't exist. Even some of the jobs that I have done simply didn't exist. I've done a lot of research into people's career transition. So looking at where there are overlaps in skill sets and where there are easy ways for people to pivot, whether that's through additional training or through on-the-job exploration. And there's a lot more flexibility than you would think, particularly in the tech sector, where none of us are in, or most of us are not in, professions that are regulated and certified, and where you need a very specific set education and training in order to do them, and where we almost all work in interdisciplinary work environments where it's really easy to look over to somebody beside you or learn with an interdisciplinary team, like where you might be able to shift your work. And so that I could not tell you now what my career will look like in another 10 years or 5 years. I don't know if those jobs or those organizations will exist yet, but I know that then I will be able to tell a interesting narrative arc that will be sellable to in a job interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, you again talked about something. The education, the world is moving fast, right? And what we learn at school change, and everything's changing, right? And recently we talked a lot about ChatGPT and how it's changing and threatening jobs, and everyone is like, are we gonna all be out of a job in the future? René, I want to talk a little bit about consulting, right? And so that career in consulting, and how do you see a little bit progress? Do you think about your role being threatened, and how do you think about your career in the future and where you want to go, given all the changes that happen in the tech sector?
You mean threatened in what way, in terms of like jobs?
By technology. So we have ChatGPT coming today, and a lot of people think that if you're a content writer, if you're a consultant, a lot of these jobs will become obsolete because the machine will be able to do them. How do you think about your career path in the future, and do you feel like there is a threat, or do you need to pivot? Do you need to learn new things to kind of keep up with the change in technology?
So I've always been learning and I'm one of my previous bosses used to say, sometimes he would say, well, you're like, if there is a project and we have no idea do we have anyone that can do it, he would send me. And sometimes I didn't even know what it was. Like I was on a project where I had to like develop a custom application in FileMaker. I had never even heard of FileMaker. But 2 weeks later, I was building the application, supporting. You can learn stuff. I've been on the job when I started at Abbott. My background was more like medical devices, but then I realized the job would be software. And the first time that you end up going to the hospital, and you're like, okay, I'm actually installing servers on the server room and like on the rack, and then registering them in the domain. And I have to know about this, and then I had to know about databases, and I had to know about networking, and I had none of this. And I told my boss, I said, look, if I'm to do this job, I'll need the knowledge of the skill. And her answer, I guess I was lucky, because she said, sure, tell me what training and send me the bill. I was like, for real? But when that happens, you have to take advantage of it. So I started looking, and I was like, okay, where can I learn about networking and TCP/IP network and DHCP servers, and then a database, and how to write a SQL query, and learn all of that, and then develop all the skills. And and then those new skills open new doors about things that I could do. And as you're doing things, you realize, you know what? I have a feeling this. Nobody's doing this right now, but it's going to become something that's needed in the future. So, and I see a lot of, in consulting, I see a lot of people who I guess it's human nature, and I would say focus on what the soft skills. They go into like standard, what we call BAPM job, like business analysts or project managers, and they've been doing that for 20 years. Like if you ask them to reverse engineer a database, or do you ask them to code, or you ask them to set up a network, like they haven't done that in very, very long, which is which is good. Like if that's what they do. But when the industry falls in a hard time, I find that the need for hard skills tends to remain. It's usually a necessity. You need people to maintain your servers. You need people to maintain to deploy your network, to build new. But maybe what you're going to do is, but maybe the PMO does not need to have all these people reporting to other people, Like, so instead of having like 12 project managers, so like you'll have fewer, but you'll still have all the hard skills. So I think if you make sure that you have hard skill expertise that you've maintained that is useful, even if you do project management and all that, but you're able to do that job. And when times are hard, okay, yes, I'm going to do architecture. I can do infrastructure or whatever it is that's your thing, that you can fall back to those hard skills. So that's been my way of making sure that, when the industry is tough, guess what? There's always a place for me. There's always a role. It might not be the role that I would pick first, but there's something.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of questions from the audience, but I want to touch base. This is something that I've been thinking about. What I'm hearing is that skills and competencies are important, but really what is more important is our attitude, right? And you're an active learner, having being an active learner and having an attitude of taking initiative and also driving yourself to is more important, right? Having that drive at work is even more important than just the skills and the competencies you have today. Because when you're an active learner, drive, take initiative, it also allow you to unlock learning new skills and competencies. And that's really important. So we shouldn't be stuck around what is it we know today, what are the skills and competencies I have, but there is also opportunity.
You can learn anything. And learning itself is a skill.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you are at it.
Yeah.
And if you stop learning and if you just you stay within your comfort zone, guess what? Your learning skills will get rusty. And then it's hard when you have to learn something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a great comment that just came in from Jen Miller that I love, but it said, you're a subject matter expert just as long as you're a day ahead of everyone else. And it's true.
This is so true.
It's so right. It's a great comment, Jim. I have another. So Nisa, we have a question for you, and this is kind of going to be. We have a couple of minutes to wrap up here, but is there a central value that has driven, or that has driven throughout your career? It seems that you've been a lot in the nonprofit world and government. Was there something that you feel that you've learned and that it's the thread that's kind of connected you through these industries that you move through?
I intentionally seek out roles and organizations where the mission and the mandate and my specific job is to do good for the public. And I think really carefully about whether or not what I am building or what knowledge that I'm contributing could potentially be used for other means. There isn't going to be an organization where you can solely do good, but I've intentionally not worked in the private sector for that reason, or I've thought really carefully about the kinds of private sector roles that I would want to and have taken on. There's a really interesting question that came through in the chat also about how do you assess whether or not an organization is going to be supportive of and safe for queer people and for trans people, and I think that's another component. I look for a couple of things. I look for organizations that are that have queer employees and especially queer management, that they're not just at the working level but have been empowered and enabled to move up in the organization. I look for organizations where it is not just cisgendered white men, but there is diversity amongst the queer people that are hired and that stay. And I look for hard policies. I look for health insurance that covers transition or other elements that would matter for me or to my queer and trans friends and colleagues. That there is a hard commitment to supporting queer and trans people as employees.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, final questions to wrap up because we're at times. But I want to just to touch about the mentorship because it's really important. But Nisa, thank you for sharing that because what you talk about is also being a mission-driven person, right? And knowing what's up my mission and going through an exercise, something we do in the QT Access program where we help participants to think about what are your values and mission, and so you can align that also about the industry and the work that you do. And it's very important that people take that moment when you have either time between career to think about what is my mission and how do I drive that. Mentorship quickly. A lot of people, part of being resilient is also having a support network to help you through these hard times. Mentorship, I see it is really key to do that. What have you had mentors? How did you get mentors? Any advice that you want to give to our participants around mentorship before we wrap up? René, yeah.
Yes, I think mentors are a critical aspect of any career. But I think in order to be an effective mentee, you have a role to play. It's not just your mentor, which means you need to be able to accept criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever someone is making suggestions, sometimes we have we'll try to be defensive, we'll try to justify, right? Or don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Your mentor is providing you invaluable input when they're telling you about things you could have done differently, or maybe you should have done differently, or so accept it as is. Do not try to justify, do not try to explain. Take what they tell you and say, you know what? This is something, this is their perception is true.
Yeah.
So and you have to accept it and then say, okay, this is not how I saw the situation, but this is how they saw it, which means other people saw it that way as well. So try to think, okay, how did it see that situation this way, and then try to learn from it.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to wrap up. Thank you again so much, Nisa and René, for taking the time to join me today. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Just a quick announcement. We are recording these sessions, the last couple sessions, this session and the one I did before, and tomorrow. So anyone, if you've missed any of these sessions, you can join us. You can listen to them later, and but we will not be recording some of the peer group sessions that's happening this afternoon. So recommend everyone to go in. Again, thank you, René and Nisa, for joining us, and good luck, everyone, with booking some interviews today or connections with the community.